Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the Senator from Raleigh County. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the Senator from Morgan, Senator from Raleigh County.
With those in the gallery as well as those on the floor, please join me in prayer. Our Father, as we've gathered together on this day, we thank you for allowing us to begin it. We thank you for giving safety of folks that have traveled from across the state to be here today. We pray that you would take control over every word, every deed. Help us to be mindful that we will answer to you one day for everything. And Lord, I pray that you would help self-interest, greed, and other things that might get in the way of doing what's best for our state, for our children. I pray, Father, that you would move those things out of the way and that we would all, with consciousness of your presence in our midst, do what we sense to be your will in everything that is done. Would you please intervene in this day of session? In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. The Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senators and all of our guests in the gallery please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, Monday, May 20th, 2019. Pursuant to the call of the President of the Senate under the authority...
The Senator from Logan requests unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guest. Introduction of guest. Communications from the House.
There are none.
Communications from the Executive.
I have
The Senator from Marion County seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move pursuant to Rule 34, Senate Bills 1029 through 1035 be withdrawn from the Committee on Education, be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time. And I ask for the yeas and nays.
The senator from Marion County moves that the bills that he referenced be withdrawn from the committee and taken up for immediate consideration. All the yeas and nays have been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor of the senator's motion will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 15 yeas, 18 nays, 1 absent and not voting, less than a majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion rejected. Messages from the executive.
I have a proclamation by the governor. I, Jim Justice, by virtue of the authority vested in the governor by Section 7, Article 7 of the Constitution of West Virginia, do hereby amend the proclamation dated the 7th day of March, 2019, calling the West Virginia Legislature to convene an extraordinary session upon adjournment sine die of the 2019 regular session, and amended by subsequent proclamation dated the 17th day of May, 2019, and amended by subsequent proclamation dated the 20th day of May, 2019, by adding item 34 as follows. 34th, a bill relating to the West Virginia Business Ready Sites Program, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the state of West Virginia to be affixed, done at the Capitol in the city of Charleston, state of West Virginia, this 31st day of May in the year of our Lord, 2019, and in the 156th year of the state. Signed, James Justice, Governor, attested to by Mac Warner, Secretary of State.
Communication will be received. Are there further communications from the executive?
No, sir.
Reports from standing committees.
There are none.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 1039 by Senators Carmichael, Mr. President, Rucker, Swope, Tarr, Trump, Blair, Boso, Azinger, Smith, and Boley, establishing Student Success Act.
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Is there objection? Objection has been heard. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration. The bill be read a first time. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Clerk will read the bill a first time.
Senate Bill 1039, establishing Student Success Act. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill to be read on 3 different days be suspended, and that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its passage.
Junior senator from 17th moves that the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 several days be suspended, and that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its adoption. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 18 yeas, 15 nays, 1 absent and not voting, less than 4/5 of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion rejected. Further bills to be introduced.
Senate Bill 1040 by Senators Carmichael, Mr. President, and Rucker, Education Savings Account Act.
Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Junior senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time. Objection has been heard. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be read a first time.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the bill be taken up for immediate consideration. A roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor of the senator's motion will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 18 yeas, 15 nays, and 1 absent and not voting, less than 2/3 of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion rejected. Further bills to be introduced?
Senate Bill 1041 by Senators Carmichael, Mr. President, and Prezioso by request of the Executive, West Virginia Business Ready Sites Program.
Bill will be referred to Committee on Rules.
Senate Bill 1042 by Senators Jeffries, Lindsay, and Baldwin, Special Community Development School Pilot Program.
Bill will be referred to Committee on Education.
Senate Resolution 104 by Senators Hamilton and Boso congratulating Webster County High School Highlanders boys basketball team for winning the 2019 Class A state championship.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over 1 day. Further bills?
No, sir.
Resolutions?
There are none.
Motions? Petitions? Senator from Morgan County.
Under motions, Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side of the vote by which we established the effective date from passage of House Bill 118, I move that the Senate reconsider its actions.
Senator from Morgan moves that the Senate reconsider our actions as to the effective date on Senate Bill 118 on House Bill 118. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider.
Majority Leader has to withdraw his motion and make it effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to withdraw his motion to make the bill effective from passage.
Junior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent to withdraw the motion by which the bill is made effective from passage. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, having voted on the prevailing side, I move that the Senate reconsider its action and passage of House Bill 118.
Senator from Morgan moves that the Senate reconsider our actions as to passage on House Bill 118. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent of the Senate to offer an amendment to the bill on third reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Are there amendments? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The members of this body will remember House Bill 118 we passed it a week ago. It's actually, we passed it on what was just the last legislative day that we had. So it is the bill that addresses the changes we made in licensure boards and how they examine prior criminal conduct and consider that in terms of licensures. The members will remember in our studies of this, we found that there are as many different ways of doing this as there are different licensure boards in the state. So after we passed the bill, we found there were some technical problems found with the bill, one of which, the biggest of which, and the one that caused everyone, I think, the most concern and heartburn, is the question of the interplay between this bill and the bill that we passed regarding the expansion of expungement opportunities. And there was concern, I think well-founded, that this bill, as it left the Senate on our last legislative day, had the potential to undermine or interfere with what we had done with respect to expungements in another bill. So, if this amendment is adopted, it will simplify this bill greatly. It will remove vast swaths of paper that were part of that bill. Members may remember what it looked like when it left here. It had a section for virtually every single licensure board. This does away with all that. It's a strike and insert amendment for the entire bill. it creates a new section of the state code. One section only. It would be designated as Chapter 30, Article 1, Section 24. The first subsection includes definitions, and it defines board. And what it's saying is it's any board created under the Chapter 30, that issues licenses, certifications, registrations, that sort of thing. It defines licensure. It defines the term unreversed. The original current law refers to unreversed convictions without a specific definition of that. And so we believe that the best thing to do was to define that term, unreversed. And this does that. And so with respect to a criminal conviction, it would mean that the conviction has not been set aside, vacated, pardoned, or expunged. So when the law as it exists refers to unreversed convictions, it's basically any conviction that hasn't had one of those things happen to it that would have the legal effect of vitiating the conviction. Subsection B brings in the language, what we've been trying to do from the beginning, the rest of the bill, to make it clear that there has to be a passage of time, that the term moral turpitude is vague and subject to inconsistent applications, so we're eliminating that. All the things that we did in House Bill 118, but in terms of draftsmanship, instead of sticking that language into I forget how many sections of the code we had it in the previous version of the bill, it's all going now in one section and made expressly applicable to all those sections of the code that address licensure. So, Mr. President, be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge the adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, all those in favor of the Senator from Morgan's amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
No further amendments. The bill will be advanced. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
House Bill 118 relating to the use of post-criminal conduct in professional and occupational initial licensure. Decision. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? Senator from Morgan County.
I'll be very brief because the amendment explains the bill. But the purpose of this bill, Mr. President, as the senators will remember, is to develop consistency across all the licensure boards in how they treat applications for licensure, people who have either a criminal history or other history in their past, to make it consistent, to give people the opportunity to find out in advance whether or not they're going to be eligible for a licensure, to make the boards tell them in advance. And our idea, this is part of all of our efforts, bipartisan efforts, would complement the minority in their hard work on this bill, Mr. President, to reintegrate people to West Virginia's workforce. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 32 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Trump moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question for the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 32 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent and not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
There are none.
Bills on second reading.
There are none.
Bills on first reading.
There are none.
Introduction of guests. The senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of inquiry to the President. In the Senate Education Committee, we have a total, I think, of 8 bills, some including the increasing teachers, school service personnel salaries, increasing basic foundational allowance for county professional student support personnel, authorizing competitive grant program for vocational technical education programs in middle schools, restoring local public school flexibility, modifying school aid formula, relating to studies of certain issues affecting public education, and relating generally to high quality education. My inquiry, Mr. President, is if we're going to be meeting in education, Senate Education today, to take up those bills.
In response to the senator's inquiry, there are no planned education meetings today.
So, Mr. President, my question is then...
Is this another point of inquiry?
It is.
Okay.
That's part of being a question, inquiry.
I'm not on the stand, Senator, but you may state your question.
Yes, sir. So the idea is that we took up two education bills that were yours. My question is why are we not being more democratic in the sense, particularly because you say you want to be bipartisan, why we're not looking at these other bills, and we have the rest of the day we could be working on these very good bills, get them down here and also get them moving, because we have plenty of time to do that. So my inquiry is, why are we only taking up your bills and not even considering others that are introduced?
In response to the senator's inquiry, there will be no education meeting today. Many of the bills that are put forth from this agenda that you mentioned are incorporated into the Student Success Act.
Well, Mr. President, I beg to say that that's not true.
Well, I'm not debating, and I'm answering questions as to points of order.
Okay,
Do you have another point of order?
that's very unfortunate, Mr. President.
Thank you. Introduction of guests. We're under introduction of guests. Introduction of guests. Remarks by members of the Senate. The senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to introduce some guests. First of all,
we'll proceed back to the introduction of guests and recognize the senator from Cabell County.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Amy Neal is here in the President's Gallery. Would she please stand? Amy has advised me that the Cabell Midland High School science experts are at the National Science Olympiad competition at Cornell University today. So let's recognize Amy. Also, Mr. President, I see seated in each of the galleries some of my constituents from Cabell and Wayne counties. I would like those folks to stand and be welcomed by the Senate. If you're from Cabell or Wayne County, stand and be welcomed by the Senate. Thank you.
All right, the senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple more guests to introduce. There's 6 teachers here from Greenbrier County today, in at least 6, in various galleries. I'd like to ask that they please stand so that we can welcome them. Sandy Beal, Emily Haas, Delegate Jeff Campbell, Kay Shirey, Jill Williams, and Maria McCoy Hanna. Will the Senate please make these educators from Greenbrier County welcome?
the senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just think we ought to take a second, and whether they're for us or against us on any particular issue, I think we ought to take a second and welcome all the educators that are here that have taken a Saturday to come down here and let us know that they want their voices to be heard. Please welcome them.
Are there further introductions? Further introductions? Remarks by members of the Senate? Senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. You know, sir, and with all due respect, here we go again. We're about to take up a bill that is almost identical to a bill that we pushed through, this body pushed through during the regular session, only to have it defeated across the hall. Here we are, we're about to spend 3 days talking about this bill when my understanding is that the House intends to take up each one of the individual measures in this omnibus bill one by one. Mr. President, I would urge you over the next few hours before we come back tomorrow to break that bill up, to let's have an up or down vote on each one of the issues that are important to education and make a decision whether or not those are good for West Virginia education or bad. They should not be held hostage one bill, sir. And I just want to say that you want to talk about wasting time and wasting money, and I have a whole bunch of other things I'd like to be doing. This is the epitome of that, because we know what the outcome is over there, but yet we're going to repeat the same conduct that we did during the regular session. And the old saying, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is the true definition of insanity. Thank you, sir.
Senate will be in order. Demonstrations from the gallery are not within the rules. The junior senator from the 17th, under remarks by members.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to comment. I think, especially for those in the galleries and those maybe watching from home, this isn't the same bill. This is quite a different bill. This has had intense efforts to reach out across the aisle. We have made this public to everyone involved, to every citizen in the state of West Virginia, to our colleagues across the aisle. We've asked for input. We've looked at the Board of Education that went statewide. We've looked at all of their input and the voices and the comments and the recommendations. Many things has been placed in this bill. There was great input across the state. Many senators here held personal forums. I went to several myself. I know senators all across the state went to individual forums to listen to parents, to listen to teachers, educators, and this is a very, very different bill. In fact, if you go through point by point, I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to explain why you would be against most of this. But I think it's incorrect in saying that this is just a revisit. So many pieces of this bill depends on others. Just one example would be the levy rate change. Every county in West Virginia, all 55 counties, are going to get significant increased funding for their schools, and that's vitally important. And that's in addition to vitally needed teacher pay raises and service personnel pay raises. Kanawha County, for example, is a significant increase. And everything, when you take a look at this compared to the other bill, this gives incredible local control. That's the one thing that when we had the independent audit that West Virginia was heavily criticized, that I'll be critical of 451, that didn't go near far enough, is that we didn't give our counties local control. Who is it for Charleston to say that the southern counties and the northern counties don't have different needs? And who knows that best but the teachers, the educators, the parents, and their elected officials in their counties. And so there's great emphasis placed throughout every single component, not just one or two pieces, but every single component of this bill, to give that local control, to give that local funding, to let them take those dollars, put them where they're best needed, in addition to markedly increasing funding. So I would encourage all to re-look at that if you feel that this is a revisit. I don't think you've read the bill very well, but thank you.
Further remarks, the senator from Logan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Well, the senator from Harrison earlier said, here we go again, and I think that's unfortunate on many fronts. I'm probably not qualified to speak on many issues in front of this chamber, being the least tenured member, but on this issue I do feel like I have somewhat valid qualifications. I wish we would have split this bill apart. It's probably got 25 different objects and issues in the bill. If we would have split this apart and worked this in a committee process and vetted these bills up or down on their merit, let the bill stand alone on its merit, I, on this side in the minority of the aisle, could probably support 80% of what's in this bill. I'll be the first to admit that. There's a lot of good things in this bill. But this is the same script, the same format that was forced down our throats in January of this year. 140-page plus, multi-object, omnibus education bill. Now, the House of Delegates has already went on record and said they intend to break this bill up and work them individually, let them rise or fall on their own merit. That's 100 members. 16 members of this chamber feel the exact same way. That's 116 members of a 134-member bicameral legislative branch that believes we ought to do the proper, traditional legislative process on education. But the majority sees it differently. And I have nothing but respect for you. I'm not trying to cast stones. I'm trying to be diplomatic in what I say. But I think the point needs to be stated, and it's valid. There's 2 or 3 issues in this bill that we are just philosophically not aligned on. I wish we were addressing wraparound services first, because today I'm joined by the people I asked for in January. The true policy experts in West Virginia are in the House today, and I appreciate that. We need to be focused on wraparound services first, not about, well, we'll try to find some money for wraparound services and make it in a supplemental appropriation. That's not good enough. Wraparound services done properly would yield immediate positive results in all 55 counties of this state with respect to education. You cannot question that. You cannot challenge me on that, because we heard that at every public meeting, both those held by the Department of Education and us by the Senate Democrats. That was the #1 battle cry of our constituents across West Virginia. And I was really trying to get my arms around this bill, and I've looked at the same language now for 9 days, and I was handed new language this morning. I would like the opportunity to vet this, to take it back to the 5 superintendents that I represent, being Logan, Boone, Lincoln, Mingo, and Wayne, the ones I talked to twice this week and solicited their input. Those are my constituents. These are my people. And they could not palate what was presented to them. This process is a long-standing tradition of a committee process, not a committee of a whole, not a committee of a few, not 18 out of 134. I'm not much on social media, but in closing, the deal killer for me yesterday was when the United States Secretary of Education, I don't even have social media. I'm a dinosaur. I apologize, but I am. While she should be out conducting national business, chose to weigh in on politics in the state of West Virginia. That's sad. I find it utterly disgusting. A lady who has made a fortune from Amway, a lady who's, the day she was elected, that K-12, the virtual school company, stock soared through the roof. Is this about checking the box in West Virginia? I hope not. I'm not going to point fingers and make accusations. But was it out of coincidence that she called out our leader, the leader across the way who happens to be in China, and says, get her done? That's sad. That's not why we're here. We're here to conduct the people's business in the people's house. And whether you like it or not, the people are here. Thank you, Mr. President.
I don't know how many times I have to say that demonstrations from the gallery are not permitted under the rules of the Senate. We so much appreciate you being here. We welcome you here, but please observe our rules. Are there other members desiring under remarks? The senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier when we had Senate Bill 451, I chose the metaphor of the Titanic, which left Southampton, England, on its fateful voyage. And it turned out that Titanic left Southampton on the same day as the day of your birth. I learned that since then. But today I'll move us over to Cambridge, England. Thomas Hobson. Thomas Hobson was born in 1544, and he owned a livery stable. Thomas Hobson would say, if you want to buy a horse, you're going to buy the horse by the door, or you're not going to get a horse at all. That's called a Hobson's choice. And that's what we have here today. Take it or leave it. You either get your pay raise, but you got to take all these other items, or you walk away from your pay raise. That's the Hobson's choice being presented to educators and school service personnel. And you know what? To a person, the ones that I've heard from reject the pay raise. They want education betterment, and they won't take the Hobson's choice. Thank you.
Senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the remarks by members, correct?
Under remarks.
Thank you. When the majority leader was speaking here a while ago, he was talking about the amount of resources that was going into the counties. And I've got the list here from the State Board of Ed on decreased funding due to the, due to the student, our bill, Student Success Act. I want to read down through some of them here. And before I do that, though, I would request that the State Board of Ed, I witnessed a lot of disinformation that took place on Senate Bill 451. And it was a lot of it through social media. And I'm a little bit of a dinosaur myself. So what the State Board of Ed ought to do, Mr. President, is communicate to every one of the K through 12 email addresses what we've got going on here. And let everybody that has a K through 12 address know exactly what is in the Student Success Act. That is what we should be doing. I don't think that we should need to count on the unions to be able to put out the information or the press, but we can talk directly to them. And there was a lot of buyer's remorse, at least to the people that talked to me, wishing that Senate Bill 451 maybe would have made it across the line, because there was a lot of good things in it, but it did not. So we're here today with the new and improved bill. And I want everybody to hear some of these numbers. There's a total of an additional $114 million going to the counties. I want to start out with Kanawha County because I seen a little thing come across the text the other day telling me that they wanted to see more money going into the classrooms. Well, Kanawha County's seen it. $9 million additional going into the classrooms. Barber County, $939,000. Berkeley County, $7,621,000. Boone, $1.5 million. Braxton, $846,000. Brook, $1.3 million. Every county seen an increase except for Doddridge, which doesn't come into play on this. Every county, Monongalia County, $5.2 million. Almost all of them are in the $1 million range, plus. This is getting it back into the classrooms. Being able to make it so that our good teachers here and throughout the state can do a better job at performing for us. Because there's not a better form of economic development, Mr. President, than an educated, drug-free, ready to go to work workforce. These people provide that. Now, I did a good many meetings out there, and I kept hearing, we don't like charter schools. We don't like charter schools. We don't like charter schools. Okay. In 451, charter schools and ESAs made up less than 1% of all the resources put out there on that. But what I heard even more so, Mr. President, was when they got done saying they didn't like charter schools, they kept telling us the things that needed to be changed and needed to be done. And all of it was saying, give me the flexibility of charter schools. And frankly, I want to do that. I want to make it so that our teachers, our educators, can go and do their job. Now, there's another, since we're under remarks from members, I can jump around on bills a little bit. We got a resolution that's going to be out here tomorrow. And this resolution gets to the core of the problem. And I want to talk about that for a second. What this resolution does is changes the Constitution. And when it changes the Constitution by the vote of the people, if we can get it through both here and down on the other end of the building, it makes it so there will no longer be an unelected body, that's the State Board of Education, and I'll get back to them in a minute, creating law in West Virginia, which they call policy, that makes these people's jobs harder to do in a lot of cases. That's got to stop. We cannot have people spending taxpayer dollars for an education and then not having approval of somebody along the line that is elected. It's a simple concept. Now, is it the State Board of Education's fault? No, it is not. This has been because of an interpretation of our court systems that gets us to this point today. I've spoken to this at meetings, and I've gotten great response from the teachers on doing this. But we got to get to the core of the problem. This constitutional amendment will actually do that. And then any policy that's put out, just like any other agency except for the Public Service Commission, we ought to get ready and get that one in the pipeline too, for that matter, but that comes before us in the other end of the building. And if it's a good idea, then we put our stamp of approval on it, we move it on. If it's not a good idea, then we're able to stop it, push back, and prevent some of the chaos that we're dealing with. It's the right thing to do. It's, again, I can't stress this enough. It gets to the core problem, allowing our teachers and our aides to do their job in the classroom without a bunch of bureaucratic paperwork and all the other things that go along with it that diminishes their time with the student. Well, I have one last thing. And that is that we're in the business of fixing the state of West Virginia. And we're doing it in an expedited fashion to the best of our ability. And we've done, this body and the other end of the building, a very good job over the last decade. Whether it's workers' comp reform and all the different things we've done, we're cutting out regulations, we're reducing taxes, and it's been a joint effort. I'm not going to sit here and say the majority of today gets to take all the credit for it. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is that we have been moving West Virginia in the right direction. Judicial was the headache that we had last year. We got through it. Our court systems are better. And what this means to us is that we're going to see improved economic development. That's where the tax base comes from. We need to have a growing tax base that's not on a roller coaster, that's on an escalator, so that we can actually continue to give our state employees, our school service personnel, our teachers, the pay raises that they deserve. But also the people in West Virginia need to have their per capita income on the rise. We need to make it so that businesses want to locate here so that we can put these students that we're graduating to work in West Virginia. And we're doing that. And Senate Bill 1 that we all worked together on here this year is one of the best economic engine development drivers that we've done for decades here. It's shown, what is there, 2,000 or 3,000 students that have already applied for that at this point in time, and it's really not active yet. Last month we had $53 million in surplus because of the good work that we've been doing, and the numbers aren't official yet, but for the month of May, we were above the revenue estimates by $23 million. Ladies and gentlemen in this chamber, we're getting the job done. We're getting the job done in the right way. We're attempting to work together. And I want to say, I'll close with one last thing, Mr. President. I applaud you in a great way. And the reason for it is I know what's been taking place behind the scenes and how we've tried to work with this legislation with everybody. And I'm not talking about just the minority in here. I'm talking about with the school board, with the teachers. I've seen how many teachers and school service personnel have come through your office. You have done an excellent job of reaching out and being able to hear and incorporate in what's necessary. And just because you don't agree with 1 or 2 or even 10%, I can tell you right now, I'll take 60% anytime on things unless it is morally wrong. There is nothing in our Student Success Act that is morally wrong. It is absolutely the right thing to be able to put forth a better product, being, i.e. our students, our children, for the people of West Virginia, and we depend on them. They are our future. They are our future educators and every other job opportunity that is in this state. I'm going to close now. Thank you. One last thing. We must, I tell you.
I know, it's unbelievable. Please.
Yeah.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. We must make sure, as I said earlier, that the information and what we're doing, they've already told us over at the state school board that they will email this out to the K through 12 email addresses. We must make sure everything that we do here is pushed out in outline, easy-to-read format, as well as the bill, and get it out to the public of West Virginia so that they don't have to rely on social media and slanted press and all the other stuff that's out there that is giving disinformation. Let them decide for themselves on an individual basis on their computer at home. Mr. President, that's essential. Thank you very much.
Further remarks? The senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to borrow a document. This is the printout of Senate Bill 1039. This is the bill that we're working on. It's a comprehensive package. Being a design professional, I recognize that anytime that you're going to do a project, you have to consider all the parts and pieces, what the implications are. They all have to work together. This particular package, Mr. President, makes formative change within what we want to do in West Virginia, focused on the children of West Virginia. My friend from Berkeley County talked about the fact that there's a lot of money being invested in this particular package. Anytime that you're going to build something, you have to consider the cost. And we've done that. We've evaluated the cost. We've put together a comprehensive package because it relies on all the vital pieces necessary to bring formative change. Now, everybody wants to break this package up into little parts and pieces. Now, you know, we like the air conditioning in a building because it's the thing that keeps us cool, it keeps us warm in the wintertime, and we like lots of windows in that building. But you know, we may not want to put the cost necessary into the concrete to build a good foundation. So we're going to take out that little package, you know, charter schools. We're going to take, oh wait a minute, wrapping on services, that's something that's in this bill that is really vitally important to our kids. That's the electrical system in this particular building, a school that we're building for our children. But we're going to take the foundation out from under it. That's part of this package. Each part of this package has to be looked at comprehensively. Will it accomplish the goal? And the goal is student improvement, improve student improvement. Why? Because this is called the Student Success Act. We can nitpick. We can pull out those various pieces. But Mr. President, if we pull out the vital pieces that are part of this package, and more importantly, the success of our students collapses. This is structure. This is infrastructure for the state of West Virginia. This is infrastructure for the development of our children. Why? Because business and industry is relying on it. Why? Because our children deserve it. Why? Because our teachers need it in order to be able to do the things they need to do to make sure that our students succeed, not just in the next 3 to 5 years, but 20, 40, and 50 years down the road. Each of us, sitting in this room right now, we're built on a plan that was developed years before. We've built upon that plan. This particular package, Senate Bill 1039, is that plan for the future. As part of that plan, the resolution that's being introduced tomorrow is also a vital part of that. That vital part of that plan that allows this legislative body, composed of the Senate and the House of Delegates on the other end, to be able to do the things that it needs to do as the elected officials, the elected representatives in our representative form of government, to be able to make sure, Mr. President, that our students succeed. Our students deserve that. Our teachers need that so that they can see the success. We've got to get the bureaucracy out of this whole thing that we're doing. Over the course of the last few weeks, Mr. President, I had some conversations one-on-one with some educators. The biggest problem that they see, as much as anything, is testing in the classrooms. Unfortunately, we as a legislature, we get to listen to what the State Board of Education is going to do, and they put the rules into place. We get to listen to the rules, and we may make comments on it, but ultimately, we don't have review and approval authority over those rules. The resolution that's being put forward will take care of that part of the package so that the legislature, the elected representatives of the people, by the people, and for the people will see success in the future to come. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? Further remarks? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate, I wasn't planning to speak, but I just want to touch on a couple things, and some of them have already been said, but I just want to make it clear, because my county was named as a county, Kanawha County, that would receive funding from this bill. I mean, I don't think you would have, if that were a separate bill, there would be no issue with passage of that bill in this chamber, or that part of the bill, in this chamber or the chamber across the hall. I mean, if that component is so serious and so important to education, and I don't disagree that it is, then why can't we just do that? I don't believe this situation where it has to, this bill, whatever we pass has to have 25 different moving parts and it's comprehensive. Because when the pay raise was promised in October of last year, that was the only thing that was mentioned to improve education. There were no other moving parts. And so I just want to make it clear from the outset to everyone listening that just because someone may be against the omnibus bill, which is very similar to the bill that was pursued earlier the last session, that doesn't mean that anyone on this side of the aisle or anyone else who may vote against it is against funding that our counties need. And so I just want to make that clear. And the other thing I want to make clear is if it's that simple to do, we shouldn't be here on a special session on another omnibus bill. We've got enough problems. The one problem that I would like to see is find a way to make sure or to keep people from in this state living in this state and recruiting people to live in this state. I mean, that's the one glaring issue. We have this diaspora of people leaving our state left and right, and that should be the special session. And I'll tell you one way to start, not attack the teachers. Thank you.
Other members desiring? The senator from Brooke County.
Mr. President, in reference to some things that were said earlier about wraparound services, when I was 16, Mr. President, on a personal level, I was a junior in high school. My dad passed away. My dad, Bill Weld. Very good guy. I miss him a lot. I missed him very much at the time. I was very close with my father. And I was about 16 and a half when he passed away. And I missed 3 days of school that October. And I went back to school on that Friday of that week. And I remember, you know, you have to get a slip signed by your teacher when you come back from an absence. And I remember all my teachers, you know, trying to find a way to talk to me about my absence and how I was doing. And I appreciated it very much. But what we've talked about in here is something like a wraparound service. I don't think that really truly existed back then. It may have. I don't remember. But I probably could have talked to somebody, probably could have used somebody to talk to. I didn't, but you know, I got through it, and I think I'm probably a stronger person for having experienced that. And it's because of that very personal experience that I went through in October of 1996 that I've become involved in working with a group of folks on a program called the Expanded School Mental Health Program. And this is a program that currently only exists in about 20 counties around the state. And it cost us about $1 million. It was a pilot program that was started a couple years ago, but we've kept it going because of the success that we've had. I first became aware of it through a counselor in my district that reached out to me, hoping that it would continue to be funded. We only had about $1 million, about $900,000 involved in it. And I didn't see why that we would, as a state, allow a program like that to go away for such a small sum of money. And so we were able to fund it and worked with the finance chairman on that issue. And we were able to fund it again this year. But as I said, it only exists in about 20 counties. And so I met with a group of folks in my district to see about putting something together, to begin the discussion about putting that program, expanding it to a statewide level. And as a result of that conversation, we were able to form, we'll call it a working group that met here in Charleston a couple weeks ago. And it was a great discussion and a great meeting to really look at, see how this program could be expanded. And one of the things that struck me as we met was that they were concerned that just by throwing counselors into schools that weren't prepared to take them on or weren't prepared to integrate them into the school system would potentially cause harm. And so currently where we're at in this expansion process is looking at schools that are prepared, schools that are identified to take something on of this nature and be a part of this program. And I think that we're going to be able to work something out, and I'm very, very hopeful, because I think this is extremely important, because not just my own personal experience when I was in school, but as an assistant prosecutor, you know, I had a lot of cases where I knew the children were involved and kids were living in the home where we had these defendants. And it was very, very difficult to see, because if I'm seeing it in court, I knew what was going on at the house. And so this is a very, very, very important thing, not just to me, but to the entire state, because we see these kinds of things all over, and we hear about it all the time. And so I want people to know that we are working on bringing this to a statewide level. We are working on addressing what is a very significant, one of the biggest issues that we are facing in the school system. We are working on that because I want to ensure that the next kid that has to go through something maybe like I did when I was in high school has somebody to talk to. There's a program that helps someone like that. And so we're working on that. It is not included in this because it is a very expansive project that we're working on, and I hope that we're able to get something together and expand that statewide. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? The Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy that we are starting a little bit of the discussion and debate, the bills that we're going to be considering over the next few days. For me, Mr. President, it starts with Article 12, Section 1 of the West Virginia Constitution. It always does. The legislature shall provide for a thorough and efficient system of free schools. Shall. It's mandatory. It's not discretionary. It's not something that the legislature gets to choose whether it really wants to do it or not. The Constitution says the legislature shall. We have a mandatory duty. We do not have a thorough and efficient system of public education in West Virginia right now. We don't. Let's be candid and honest about it. We've all taken the oath to that Constitution. We can do better. We can do better. And we have to do better. We have a moral imperative to do better for our children, for the children of West Virginia. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think everyone agrees with that. Every member of the Senate, both political parties, all of our guests, the citizens of West Virginia, they look to all of us. They look to all of us to provide a thorough and efficient system of free schools, public education for the children. It's why we're here. It really is. It's why we're here. And it's not happening now. And I'm not pointing at a finger at anybody in particular in that, Mr. President. Certainly not our teachers. West Virginia has some fabulous teachers, people who are dedicated totally and completely to delivering a quality education for our children. But when we see that it's not happening, what are we to do? I mean, we should recognize we have to do better. So people have universally acknowledged that West Virginia has one of the most, if not the most, centralized systems of public education in the United States of America. It is completely centralized, run by and large state law at the state capitol. The Student Success Act breaks that paradigm. That's one of the things I like most about the bill. Throughout that bill, you'll see areas and instances where control and authority, decision-making passes to the local levels on a number of things. There are so many things in that bill that are positive. But among those, high among those, is the enhanced local control, local authority. You know, like probably everybody in this room, I attended many meetings, public education meetings, between our regular session and this session. Heard lots of discussion, valuable feedback, much of which is incorporated in the Student Success Act. I would compliment you, Mr. President, for making sure, and our esteemed education chair, that many of the things we heard at these meetings and fora that were held around the state, even with respect to charter schools, where there is, I get it, some resistance, political resistance, but many of the things we heard even about that are incorporated in this bill, this revised bill. So with respect to charter schools, who can authorize a charter school is changed in this bill. And it is essentially, under this bill, a local decision. A local decision, empowering local county boards of education primarily. We all recognize that enhanced compensation is needed for our teachers to make salaries competitive in West Virginia. That's in this bill. And compensation increases for school service personnel and others. One of the things that I heard at every meeting I went to was people said, Senator Trump, it's different now from the way it was when you were in school. We have kids that have problems that we never saw before in West Virginia or anywhere else. And I know it's true. We have children being reared in the state and throughout America, but in the state by their grandparents, in some cases great-grandparents, without stable home structures. This bill, one of the things I really like about this bill is it is a response in many parts to what we heard at those meetings. So people said, we need more support. We need to have additional social services available for students. It costs money. We need funding for that. Well, Mr. President, it's in the bill. It's in the bill, and the bill recognizes we have to do a better job, and we have to deal, our teachers, their families, school administrators, people are dealing now with circumstances that really and truly are unprecedented. And this legislature, in bipartisan fashion, I've watched for the last 5 years, I know, and it was going on before that, efforts made to try to ratchet back this horrible opiate crisis and scourge that we have in this state. This bill has provisions and funding in it that are a part of what will be that solution. We have to improve. Why? The truth is, the scores are not great. The NAEP scores, the SAT scores. I saw on the internet that West Virginia's 49th. 49th in SAT scores. I dare say that is not acceptable to anybody in this room. And it should not be. It should not be. Now, is this bill a magic bullet? No, but it's a step in the right direction, Mr. President. We have to act. The time for us to act is now. We cannot sit by. It's not fair to the students. It's not fair to their families. It's not fair to our teachers who are trying on a daily basis, every day, to provide a quality education to our children. And the structure that we have in place in this state is in the way. It's time to make changes. And I know change is scary. It's hard. It's things that are unknown. Change is hard. I get that. But we have to do it. Our children are worth taking the risk for. Now, does this bill wander off into uncharted territory that's never been tried before? No, Mr. President. This bill borrows from things that have succeeded in other places, in other states. Let me have that map, if I might, please. And I'm not an expert on charter schools, but, Mr. President, take a look at this map. You will recognize this as a map of the 50 states of the United States of America. And the states in red are those states which have authorized in some fashion, charter schools. Now you'll note there seems to be an island in the middle of the red. And it is West Virginia. And so do I suggest that charter schools are a magic bullet that are going to solve every problem in West Virginia? No. But I do suggest that there is a basis for us to believe we should not be fearful of trying something that's a little different from what we've tried before. When 44 other states in the District of Columbia have already done it, many with great stories of success, we need not be afraid of it. We need not fear it. And it may be part of a long-term solution as we take a step into that. Maybe it won't. Maybe the legislature 5 years hence or 10 years will say we should reverse course on it. But to stay an island as we are, it would be one thing if we were first. If we had the highest rated, the best outcomes of public education in the whole country, and we're the one state with a different color, you could make the argument that maybe that's the reason. But we're not. So I say, and I'm not an expert in charter schools, but what I would say is we should not be afraid to try things that might be successful. When at many of the meetings I attended, I had a number of public educators say to me, well, if charter schools offer such promise, why don't we give all public schools the same authority or flexibility that charter schools would have? And I took those comments to heart, and I think many others did, because I see language in the bill in the bill that we're going to consider this week that provides or attempts to provide that kind of flexibility, not just to the traditional public schools. In the bill, there's language about the expansion of flexibility in innovation zones for public schools, Mr. President. That's in there. And I assume that that's in there because others heard the same thing I heard. Don't limit it just to a handful of charter schools that might get created or experimented with in West Virginia. Provide flexibility everywhere. So this bill is laden with attempts at increased flexibility, open enrollment provisions, enhanced innovation zones. The time to act is now. It's time. You know, it is what we're here for. This bill will improve, in my judgment, in my belief, this bill, and it's not perfect. I get that. You know, there are things about it that I would change and will try to change. And I have faith in this body. All 34 members, both parties, we'll work the bill tomorrow. We'll work amendments tomorrow. Members want to offer amendments. We'll debate them, consider them, and ultimately pass a bill when this process is working as we want it to, and amendments are fully debated and considered. This legislation can be improved before it leaves and goes to the House of Delegates. I have an amendment I want to offer tomorrow when we get to that stage, but we have to act. Our children are too important. We have waited too long. It is time to act and move forward and take bold steps to improve public education in West Virginia, to allow our gifted teachers an opportunity to demonstrate in ways that our structure prevents them now, demonstrate their talents and abilities and skill. Mr. President, I hope that by the time that we leave town, whenever it is, tomorrow or Monday, that we have passed the bill to the House of Delegates. I get the comments that were made by some members who've already stood up to speak, and I try never to predict what, you know, the other house or even this house will do. And it is frustrating sometimes to try to figure out how things will be received in the House of Delegates, but that should not forestall us. That should not deter us from taking action. The time to act is now. We owe it to the children of West Virginia. We owe it under the oath we've taken to Article 12, Section 1 of the West Virginia Constitution.
Further remarks. The senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. And like some of my colleagues, I didn't expect to be speaking today, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward with it. Yeah, I'm a representative of the people, just as each and every one of you. But if you look in the gallery, we also have representatives of the people, smaller people that they take from childhood and put them out the door at the end of 12 years. The representatives of that small population, and they also are representatives of those parents they interact with each and every day. These folks are listening. They're listening to those parents, and they're listening to the children what they need. And in listening just doesn't mean with your ears, it also means with your eyes. And they see what's coming into the classroom on a regular basis. This piece of legislation falls short of addressing those wraparound services that each and every one of these folks have mentioned to us is a dire need of correcting education. I would argue that maybe that there's really not a problem with education and grade scores as long as we can address wraparound services. But I'm listening today to the comments here on the floor, and what I'm hearing is you're still not listening. After all these months and all these weeks and all these meetings, you're still not listening. No means no. It's like a bad date where there's two people in that vehicle, and one's just mauling the other one wanting something. And that's what we have here. No means no. There's a lot of great conversations going on here about what this bill presently has, but those are morsels, just little pieces of the pie. We're not addressing those bigger issues of the wraparound services. And these folks here have come down here to represent their representatives, both the children and the parents, and we're not giving them the respect they deserve. You know, we're supposed to be quiet. They're expected to be quiet in those galleries. Well, we need to be quiet too. We need to be quiet. We need to listen. Because they have spoken. We know the numbers. We've seen the reports. We've seen the 88% of the people who have spoken, who are in favor of those changes that came out of those meetings that we've all been attending. We need to listen, folks, and we're not doing it. We're not doing it. You know, this debate's going to go on and on and on for hours tomorrow. I can see that already. And then come third day, there will be even more debate and comments. And will we be even any further ahead than we were during regular session? Unlikely. The bill will go over there as an omnibus piece of legislation. They'll break it apart. They'll send it back over here. And the same argument goes on and on and on. No means no. They don't want charter schools, and they know why they don't want charter schools. Report after report after report shows that these are failing. Now, I didn't bring a fancy board in, as my senator from Morgan has done, but this is my visual aids right here above me. They are my visual aids. And I would argue that poster board there is backwards. I'm the optimist. I believe that the blue states have it right by rejecting the idea of charter schools. But that's the bill killer, is charter schools. There's some pieces of legislation they would like to have that's tied up in this omnibus bill. They would like to have a pay raise. But that just tells me right there, they're foregoing a pay raise because they know charter schools are bad for students, that they're bad for the other states. There's report after report that backs them up. I'm with this group up here. I'm with those children in the classroom, and I'm with those parents. And I'm going to continue to listen. Now, the Senate President knows where most of us will be on our vote later on. And I believe that vote is with those folks in the gallery, those folks back home. Again, no means no. Get rid of the charter schools, and we can probably have a real serious debate here and probably make some effective changes. But no means no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further members desiring remarks? The senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator from Morgan rightly pointed out in the Constitution under Article 12, Section 1, the legislature shall provide by general law for a thorough and efficient system of free schools, and that's true. And I think we all uphold that. We take the oath to uphold our obligation to the Constitution. And as I talk with each of us and we talk, I don't think there's disagreement on many aspects or some of the aspects that are being talked about. But the Constitution also is very clear. Before Article 12, there's another article. A little bit before that, Article 6, Section 30. And in there it says, no act hereafter passed shall embrace more than one object. So as the senator from Morgan says, you know, he said that the Constitution states or says shall, mandatory, duty, shall provide for a thorough and efficient education. Constitution also says shall. No act hereafter passed shall embrace more than one object. The bill before us is unconstitutional. It's not in line with this provision of Article 6, Section 30. Because it's embracing, as the senator from Nicholas says, multiple, comprehensive, moving parts, aspects of provisions. Mr. President, I think that the framers of the Constitution, and of course the people of West Virginia adopting the Constitution, gave us a clear mandate of how we conduct our business. And that's because they don't want this all or nothing. They don't want to have to sit there and choose the good, the bad, and the ugly all together. It reminds me of when you go to a yard sale and they put everything in a box. And there's one lamp that works, but the rest of it's junk. I like to take the lamp that works. No, you got to take the whole box or forget it. Well, I don't want the other junk. Well, that's the way it is. It's the box. See, that's what this bill is. It's a box at a yard sale with a couple good lamps that works and some junk. See, the founders, the Constitution is clear. It says we don't need to choose it that way, folks. You can have legislation and be able to look at the good and not have to take the bad and the ugly. You know? And this is where we are. And this is where democracy is being eroded or attacked right here in this body. It's interesting that we want to raise up the Constitution when it works for us, but we ignore other articles that don't. Mr. President, it's interesting that you bang the gavel upholding certain rules of the Senate when it works for you, but then in other things it doesn't happen around here. You know, I don't understand why we can't go to education this afternoon and work on some very good legislation. I don't understand that. And it's not true in the sense that everything that was introduced is actually in this one bill that is unconstitutional because it's multiple objects. You know, why can't we work on legislation today and let's pass out legislation? Mr. President, you know, several weeks ago we were here and we passed out I don't know how many different pieces of legislation of different objects, 17 or more, suspending rules, passed it out. House did it in one day, we got it done. Right? Good stuff. Good stuff. But no, we're putting some good stuff in it with a bunch of junk, and we're saying you got to take it all or forget it. You know, Mr. President, you know, we're talking about now changing the Constitution. Tomorrow a resolution is going to be introduced so that we change the Constitution. I would ask that we start following the Constitution before we maybe start changing it. Because I can't understand why you are persistent in keeping everything in one package. We've been very clear there are things in there that we would very much like to vote on. We could do it today. We like it. The stuff that's a little bit more contentious, we can start working in committee. That's the committee structure, so that we can work on this stuff today. We can go all day. We can start working on this and make it and get the good legislation passed. You know, Mr. President, Senator Morgan says that, you know, he hopes that by the time we leave here, by Monday, that we pass some good bills. I think everybody in this chamber would probably agree with that. I hope we do pass some good bills. You know, and so I'm hoping that, Mr. President, that you can call an education committee meeting this afternoon. And let's start working on the legislation that's there too. Yeah, we got a piece of legislation on the floor that bypassed the education committee. It's interesting, the ones that you chose to send up there and the ones you kept down here. So yeah, we got that, but we also got some up there that we can be working on as well. And so I say that we do that. And just as was said here earlier, you know, it says the time is to act now. We have to act. We owe it to our children. We can't be waiting any longer. We need to take bold steps and move forward. Mr. President, I say this after, I say as soon as we recess, and I'd say we recess, go up there to education. Let's work on that legislation. Let's act now. Let's move it. Let's bring it back down on the floor this afternoon. Let's have the debates. Let's continue working until we get good legislation out and quit treating public education like a yard sale, putting all the junk in with some of the good stuff. Let's do some good stuff, Mr. President. And the fact of the matter is the people of West Virginia owe us. They owe this. They deserve this from us. And that we need to start following the Constitution. The omnibus bill is unconstitutional. Break it up in its parts. Let's get it down here and let's move. Mr. President, take that gavel and bang it to keep the rules of the Constitution upheld, and let's start today. Thank you.
Other members' remarks, the senator from Raleigh County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the remarks of everyone today, and I'm amazed at the admittance of ignorance concerning matters of education and the admittance of scholarliness over the Constitution. I too am a theologian, not a constitutionalist, and I'll be glad to admit that. But I do understand that within the Constitution, those same people who wrote the Constitution, Mr. President, within a few days of authorizing that, initiated the Senate rules, and they also decided that they would set those aside with Rule 61, with suspension of rules or orders. Please understand that we ought not pick and choose to confuse the general constituency that is represented in the hall just because we have media and onlookers. We ought to represent the truth. The truth is this: every single bill that goes through this body has elements within it that we could argue the exact same points that I've heard today. We don't like this, we don't like that. If we chose to take the position of no on a bill that we did not like 2 or 3 parts, we wouldn't vote for any bill. None of us would. To stand up and showboat and grandstand just because we're talking about a bill that is very, very important, I think we ought not minimize it like that. I think what we need to do is we need to do like what has been trying to be done before this session even began, and that is get on the same page with some things. That we would get our minds together and realize that, yes, there are going to be some things that we don't care for in this bill. Okay? What's new? Well, I don't know that it's going to help or it's going to work. Well, give it a shot and try it, and we can change it later if there's a problem. A vote of no for this bill is a vote for every single component. It's a no vote for the teachers to get the raise that they deserve. It's a no vote for the local control that we need to drive down. It is a no vote that will create confusion, and misinformation is ridiculous. And we need to just be honest and above board. If you're for it, fine. If you're against it, fine. But let's be truthful in our presentation, because one of the reasons we're here is because of the misinformation that has gone out, and that's very, very unfortunate, because everybody that I've sat down with, and I should say this, wraparound services, I'm for. I grew up in a crazy home, father dealing drugs, a drunk. I lived those experiences as a high school teenager where I saved my father's life, becoming the hand tourniquets for his wrist that he had slit as I straddled his body, squirting blood out. I happen to have spent over 40 years in education. To this very moment, I teach 2 high school classes. As a certified teacher with the American Association of Christian Schools, I employ teachers. I am married to a teacher. I have family. We are involved in caring for kids. And the insinuation that we would not care for children in trying to promote our public education children is inappropriate. And obviously I'm very passionate, not about every element of this bill, but we've got to move the needle forward. And when you look at this bill, you understand, why don't we break it down? Why don't we take years to debate everything? There's a reason why. Because we got a graduating class of 2020 that they're not going to get in on anything here. They don't get the advantage. But maybe by 2021, some new things can happen and we can help them. Let's help them and the future generations. Let's help them. And if we need to tweak it, let's tweak it. But let's be careful about going too far. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Further remarks? Miscellaneous business. Oh, Senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree about grandstanding. Apparently, I don't understand what it is, though. But, you know, we're taking something here that's really not complicated. We all agree that we've got some issues that we need to change. We've all said that there's parts of this bill that we like. There's parts of it we don't like. But I've spent 48 years of my life in the grocery store. And if you ever, when you're in the store, I want you to pay attention to something. There's only about one item that I know of that you can actually go to and open it up and see what's inside it. Everything else is sealed. There's a reason for that, and it's called a dozen of eggs. And the reason that you can open up that dozen of eggs is so you can look inside and say, ooh, this one's broke, I don't want this. That's all we're asking to do. Open up the dozen of eggs and let us look and let us take the ones that we like and leave the broken one in the package. It's called choice. Now, what would you think if you'd come in the store and the eggs would have tape around them? How many people buy a dozen of eggs that don't open it up to see if there's a broken one in it? It's common sense. That's what you do. But that's not what we're doing here. This is a sealed dozen. If you want a dozen of eggs, you're going to take it. You're going to take the good ones with the bad ones. That's stupid. That's just stupid. You can't sell eggs if you can't look inside of them. And that's what we're doing. We've got a package of eggs here that you won't let the people look inside and decide which ones they want, whether they do or they don't. Why would we do this? Because you got to get rid of the bad eggs somewhere. Thank you.
Miscellaneous business. Further remarks. The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like many before me, I did not expect to speak today, at least in remarks by members, but I will tell you that I feel I have to stand up because that analogy that we just heard is a very appropriate analogy for what we are trying to do as a Senate majority here. What we have right now in West Virginia is we have an educational system that is like that carton of eggs, that is sealed, that does not provide choice to students, to parents. Based on where you live, you only have the one choice. Unless you happen to be one of those fortunate ones that, you know, have a family that is doing well financially, able to afford going to, you know, other schools, other places, move, which we heard about mentioned, how we're losing the population, people who are leaving the state of West Virginia. That is happening, and some of it is because of the education. All of our surrounding states have some choice. That's what that colored chart is. It was about charter schools, but the point is all of our surrounding states have some choice. So I applaud the analogy. That is exactly what I don't want to see. And in terms of us doing a comprehensive bill, I will tell you, it is not because I'm afraid of separating bills. We have the votes to pass everything that we have put together in one comprehensive bill separately. But the point is, it is comprehensive. It is important. And I do consider everything in there essential. There are things in there that I don't necessarily support, that I'm doing because, you know, we know that there are others who support it that really think it's important. It's not necessarily what I consider an essential component to improve student success. But I will tell you, I'm willing to try. And I'm willing to try because we're in a situation where we need to change. So I just ask for everyone to please consider that our focus is on trying to improve education in West Virginia, to let every child succeed, and that involves choice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Miscellaneous business, the Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 2 p.m. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted and the Senate adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow.